topic altogether. Today, we are just trying to understand what would happen to the current workforce. Are they still relevant? And are the skills that they have acquired for the last 5, 10, 20 years are still relevant for them to become the workers of the future? Or basically they need to tweak and to bring in new elements which make them more qualified and more talented, if you like, to be employed by either by the current employers or by the new employers, or perhaps by by making themselves entrepreneur. And this is the three important aspects: whether they can keep the job in the existing workforce, or they may look into another job altogether by having reskilling training. And most likely, from my perspective, they or some of them, big chunk of them, might be considering to look for another job altogether on their own. And this is quite dynamic, because skill and reskilling should be an evergreen exercise. And the challenge: how do we know our talent? Are we on the right track? Are we really fit to take the new job, the current environment, or we are not that fit altogether? So here we are talking about the importance of big data and AI to really scan our capabilities, our profile, our character, our knowledge, our attitude and character against the new way of doing things in terms of work from home, in terms of the performance oriented, bottom line oriented, and so on and so forth, and the new requirement of the market forces, either in the government sector, in private and entrepreneurship sector. So we believe, to be discussed further, that the AI can do some magic and some wonder to fill the gap and to bring the current employees to the middle ground and high ground in a more speedy manner, by relying on the big data surrounding his character, the current job prospect, and the requirement of the day. I will stop by that juncture. I will leave to other panelists to chip in and to comment on the needs of rescaling and how could we do it fast. And rather than waiting for the next 1 year, we need to really look into new syllabus, new curriculum, and new training module to prepare the future workforce, not after 6 months, perhaps after 3 months from now. Over to you, Razi. Razi?
Thank you very much, Dato'. Yes, very, very good and general overview of the situation and how important you feel about this thing. Nazri, perhaps you may want to say something on that from the technology point of view. Over to you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Right. I've got some questions for Dr. Dawood. Maybe before I go ahead with my presentation, on perspective of the environment in Malaysia right now, you sat in various boards, you lead various institutions in various capacity, right, Doctor? And do you think that the Malaysian workforce right now is lagging behind in terms of productivity, or you think there are ways to improve it? Are we far? Are we near? Are we on par with the expectations of the current climate and industries? What is your take on it? To Dr. Dawood, and then perhaps to my fellow analysts, Naeem, what do you see when you see the youth coming out to the workforce, right? Are we really basically equipped to handle the dynamics? I'm just curious about the Malaysian environment right now, and to what extent is it?
Thank you. Echo. Yeah, I mean, basically, the level of productivity has been thus far quite fair, satisfactory, but with the coming of COVID-19, it has changed almost everything. We need to refine the meaning of productivity. We need to redefine the meaning of performance. We need to redefine the meaning of high performance and great performance and critical performance as we proceed, as we progress in the value chain of performance in the workforce. So I have to say that many things have changed since then, February, March this year. So the current workforce that we have, either in the collar, blue collar or white collar, would be changing too much. I mean, that beyond our imagination in terms of the boss monitoring and assessing the performance of the employees, and for the employees at various level and perspective, for them to be more responsive, more creative, more delivering what they're supposed to do, has changed almost completely, because there's no physical contact. And in fact, they are supposed to be working around the clock, which is not good as well, because again, we need to protect the interest and welfare of the workers, and some of the employer might take the advantage. Nazi, this is the time for them to make the employees working around the clock, which is not that healthy. So we need to redefine both ways, the employer and the employee's perspective. This is about the management of the workers, but the most important thing that you were asking about the skill. I think the skill has changed a lot. I have to say that 50% we need to put a new skill. In fact, even for me, I need to relearn and and de-learn and relearn again in my own way in my own space of business and expertise, because the 50% that I have had before is no longer relevant. Thank you.
For Naeem, right, the level of resilience that you see amongst youth whom you're working very closely, turning them from youth to entrepreneur, right, is the level of resilience before and now during the COVID period has become stronger, weaker, or the same compared to 10 months ago, for example?
Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everyone. First of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Naeem Jaafar. I'm the founder of Foresight. Foresight is a social innovation firm that try to make goods of any form of opportunity to innovate across sector, not only in learning and education sector, but across sector. Just to share a bit, we are quite busy throughout the PKP, because it seems that people are now try to adopt to the new normal, as what the Joseph's computer mark it as the creative destruction. We are in the process of actually deconstructing the traditional norms in our society that is actually happening without any early signal. Suddenly COVID strike us, but some of it actually is a long due reform across sector that is needed. Before I jump into Nazri's question, I think it is imperative to register here that we are now facing global leadership challenges, because when everyone is uncertain what the future of workforce, what the future of economy gonna unfold for the next, even for a couple of years from here on, the ability for everyone to navigate uncertainties, vagueness, and fragility would be the highest leadership caution is needed. It is actually applied to any walk of government sectors, social sector, business sector, even political and religious sector, to highlight few. In order to see youth adopting to the current climate, I think youth somewhat relatively are more resilient nowadays compare, I would say, 10 months before now. Because if we can notice that before COVID struck us, our economic performance overall is not really encouraging. Therefore, many graduates are actually looking for more independent works. and they are more flexible and adaptable in the changing climate. Therefore, I think this is a good stepping stone for youth, especially referring to youth who are not entering university, or those youth are graduating from higher education institution, to really adapt to a new climate. But if we do regional comparison between Malaysian youth in other part of the region, I think a lot more we need to really empower our youth, especially in the area that we are actually having a lot of opportunity. For example, in the area of digital marketing, knowledge sector in the digital sector, as well as e-commerce retail, that we are actually very much at the top of the regional market. Back to you, Nazri.
Yeah, Naim, there's a question posed to you in the chat by a gentleman called Mr. Azam Yaakob. He's requesting for some examples of your resilience and how they've pivoted or adapted, or any case studies that, based on the work that you've done. So how have some of them managed to pivot and how some of them have not? So could you give like specific example of some youth on a no-name basis?
This is interesting to highlight, because I would say anything that happened in our youth scenes, as far as job creation or job crafting is all about, that would be our precursor to a more bigger trend as far as job market is concerned for the next couple of years. Therefore, pivoting and try to adjusting during this COVID-19 has always been in their DNA. I have quite a few youth under my purview, under Foresight Studio, the project that we started back in 2011, where those happen to be my boys. Now they are matured enough to be able to pivot very rapidly within few circles of economic dynamics. For example, some of them previously are very much in the service sector, for example, in the tourism sector. Okay, but the so-called the intellectual and the digital knowledge surpluses that they have enable them to pivot very rapidly, very quickly, and very timely. That's most important. And they are able to actually opt to a more relevant venture or a startup or MVP that is very much needed urgently during this social distancing period. Arba Travel is one of the example where Amar Rosiza and the team, they are hugely impacted. 60 of the staff needed no pay, unpaid salary, and other projects that require them to opt from a travel agency to e-commerce platform. So therefore, I think some trend that I would like to suggest is that there must be some leveraging skills that youth need to enhance in order for them to be, to be very nimble, speedy in terms of the ability to change the direction of the business.
Thank you, Naim. Hopefully that answers part of, if not all of Azam Yaakob's question. And of course, we welcome any questions that come forward to us. And we have to pardon our moderator, who is currently carrying out some outdoor activities because of some humanitarian work that he's involved in. But do allow me to cover part of his role to make sure that the discussion becomes smooth and all that. Razi, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Nazri. As you can see now, I'm still offloading the goods and the food packs to the beneficiaries. It's a bit far from KL, it's outside KL now. I really hope that you can cover my lot at the moment.
Hello.
Perhaps Nazi, if you can take over, because
Yes.
like stable. Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
Dr. And Nazri, apologize really again. I hope Nazri can take over from here. Thank you very much.
No worries. Happy to do that, Razi, as always. To put things into perspective, we've heard about Dr. Daud commenting about his anecdotal observation in the institutions about how he feels that whilst we are at par, but the challenges are going to get wider and tougher in the next 12 months or so. And Naeem feels that there has been some resilience being demonstrated either through pay cuts or through reworking their job and working longer hours and taking tougher roles to switch from one business model to another. Now, on my side, I've prepared a few slides that would provide some backdrop in terms of reskilling employees at the global level, followed by how we can basically adapt it to the Malaysian and Singapore workforce. I mentioned Singapore because I think in the audience, we have some Singapore participants. So we want to make sure that all are covered as best as possible. Now, putting aside government grant schemes and assistance scheme, I think what we are trying to address here is that we want to, put some thoughts about what's happening now, right? So as mentioned by my distinguished panelists, companies all around the world, not just Singapore, Malaysia, right, across sectors, they try to become more productive, more efficient, lower fixed costs, more variable costs taking on such that they don't eat into their cash flows and liquidity, right? And yet at the same time, they have to remain competitive in today's dynamic markets. So according to World Economic Forum, this is something that they backed it up with a lot of statistics, a lot of pain, a lot of challenges, even as early as 2019, last year, right? And we are faced with a really, really tough situation where by 2022, 2 years from now, less than that, more than half of the workforce, right, will require significant re-upskilling. So now we're not even talking about reskilling, we're talking about also upskilling. So if you try to recall and understand the meaning of reskilling as opposed to upskilling, it's about preparing for future jobs. It's about existing work that we do and how to acquire new skills to deal with that new job, existing job. And it's about being relevant. It's about new ways of doing things to achieve the same outcome, if not better. And at the end of the day, it boils down to the willingness and ability of the employees. Willingness means, are you willing to reskill or take on more knowledge, competencies to do your job? Ability is about upgrading yourself, making sure you are able to do a little bit more technology-centric or value-adding to the technology work that's coming our way. So all in all, reskilling involves a large significant portion of mindset shift. Okay, and if you look at the statistics under the Future of Jobs report, and bear in mind, this is before COVID, right? You can see that the reliance on the top 5 things, such as big data analytics, IoT, app and web-enabled markets, machine learning, cloud computing, right? These are the things that companies are moving towards implementing them. So this was 2 years ago. So why do companies want to adopt this? Simple reason, less reliance on the labor, less reliance on human capital that are doing monotonous or regular work, right? So this is a global study done by WEF, World Economic Forum, under their Future of Jobs report that looks at how companies are transiting or transcending towards adoption of technology. And if you look at the first 5, you know already, this involves robotic process automation or business process automation. This involves decision-making. It involves solving routine as well as complex problem. So this is the wave of change that are already happening from a data-driven perspective. Now, what the effects that tech does, whether it's AI, big data analytics, or so on COVID, right, during COVID period, you can see from here, right, that there are 3 shifts that we see happening in 2018, okay, and going towards 2022, 2020 going towards 2022, and then in 2022, by 2022, what will be declining, right? So we are left with these situations, okay, whether you're employee or your employer, you know that we need analytical thinking, innovation, complex problem solving, critical thinking analysis, and all that, right? But as we go on in 2022, some of these are still needed, but some of the shifts are happening whereby you can actually use machines to carry on the heavy lifting of the work. Okay, and you can see that by 2022, certain things involving manual work, physical, memory, right, managing people, reading, writing, active listening, technology installation, right, quality control, safety audit, this can be basically robotized. This can be basically automated, right? So these are the shifts that we're seeing happening, and yet in the middle, we can see that the humans, even with the machines, are expected to reskill. That means for the same job, they have to increase their level of analytical thinking. They have to increase their level of active learning. They have to be more creative. They have to be more critical thinking and analytical in that sense to solve complex problems, right? So we see that things will not be the same as what Dr. Said earlier. Change is the only constant, right? But the idea is to find out where exactly are the areas of change or the levers of change and what will be phased out as we go along, right? And so will it be 100% replaced by machines? I don't think so. But you can see that, as mentioned earlier, right, more than 54% will go through that reskilling and upskilling process, and this would entail part of it, right? In order to give you some example of the effect this technology has on the required skill set, as Dr. Wen mentioned, it does not just affect white collar or blue collar. Okay. For example, even
The voice is breaking up.
Right?
The voice is breaking up just now.
Okay. Let me just go slow a little bit. Okay. Okay, so even for judges, for example, you will see that they want to clear manual work, thousands of cases that come their way. Can everybody hear me? Okay. Yes, you can see here, even the manual work of going through court cases can be automated. So judges will not just have to rely on court clerks and just their own manual time to evaluate cases. Now the judges can be equipped using artificial intelligence on the probability of them dismissing or rewarding a case in favor of one party over the other. So this can be automated. This has been done in such a way that they can have the final analysis and final prognosis with all the documentation done by the machine accurately, and less human bias and less errors and less fatigue. Okay, this is in the context of judges. How about in terms of the context of education? We can see that teachers and educators have to deal with many aspects of monitoring student performance and what you call the personalized learning or personalized teaching. So using AI, technology is available to basically use academic and non-academic data to evaluate a student's profile in terms of their academic learning mindset, right? And in terms of their career mindset, in order to prepare them for the challenges that comes out of the COVID situation. So you can see machine can be used to evaluate humans, identify text and numerical data, and make prediction about their knowledge level, competency level, and even give recommendation on what they need to improve on the subjects they're learning while still connecting to the industry forces. So information about the industry can also be collated and guided to them in terms of what they need to prepare to be resilient, to be ready, and to be mentored by the right people to guide them in their career. So we've seen in terms of the legal court system, we've seen now in terms of education, and then finally in terms of investment in stock market, for example. So in the future, one can just rely less on equity analysts who will write at times bias reports because they belong to the sell side, right? They want to push the brokerage commissions and all that. But yet, the poor, medium-sized and small companies that are listed in Bursa or SGX are typically not covered extensively. So using systems like this, you can basically evaluate companies' health in terms of their fundamentals, in terms of their risks, in terms of their valuation, in terms of their comparison. So things like this can be automated and has been automated to allow retail investors to manage their risks. So what we are seeing here is that where can we go for reskilling in technology or AI areas? In my humble opinion, we have in place in KL, especially called the Center of Excellence in AI Innovation, that because of the increasing needs by 2022 to develop such attributes, we want to play a supporting role, a pivotal role to help people exposed to big data analytics, AI for decision making, situational analysis, and adaptation to business situations. So this is something that we want everybody to participate and to get ourselves ready for the new normal. And I pass over to Dr. Daud and Naim. If Razi is still around, please kindly take over. But this is how to. So when you have such reskilling means add on additional skills to handle certain job. We want to preserve the job. We want to make sure that we are able to carry out and fulfill some of these issues that been highlighted earlier, where 54%, as mentioned, of the workforce is expected to go through some form of reskilling exercise by 2022. Over to you, Dr. and Naim, if you have anything to comment.
Okay, thank you, Nazri, for a very comprehensive presentation on the areas that you think strongly that AI and big data can help to do the reskilling works and contribution to the current workforce that we're having at the moment. If I may add a bit on that, I think this is important. As we speak nowadays, we are in the second month or third month of the restricted movement order, but we have not seen anything solid coming up to the surface that can be adopted, that can be, put on the shelf and can be shared across the agencies and the community, community center of excellence for them to start using a bit of that you mentioned just now, to start looking into their, the cleaners, the basic thing of their basic workers. What will happen to them? What will happen to the those who are working in the factory if they are no longer required to do 5 days job in a week? So what will happen to the other 2 days or the 3 days? So we need to reskill them to take another job. Perhaps they may work for 3 days in a week, but the 2 days they can work somewhere else. So this is something they need to be reskilled, they need to be upgraded. Again, this is quite crucial because the employers, when they ask people to work less, surely they will cut their salary. The moment they cut their salary, the social economy of the society will be affected, and that could implicate the health of the economy, not only the country, but also the family and the members, affect the education. They might pull out the children from the school. They might stop the tuition, classes for their exam sitting children going to the main and big examination this year or next year. So everything will be fall apart, if you like. So this is something that we do want that to happen. But I wanted to ask you again, perhaps after Naim later on, are we ready to upload something on the cloud, on the whatever system, first to people to reassess their current skill against the current work requirement of flexible hours, of flexible skill, flexible thing to do, not only hours, but flexible skill that they have to do. Number two, how could they hook themselves to 1 or 2 programs for 1 week or 10 days to be able to be, to get the confidence that they are still relevant workforce in the coming months and years. Number three, perhaps a kind of incubation center, a kind of training center for them to go through one whole round, that now they can say to the whole world, I am reskilled workers. So this is something I wanted to put the challenge to you, and perhaps Naim, if you want to take this challenge as well, intellectually, of course, you may proceed further. Over to you, Naim or Nazri.
Okay, thank you, Doctor. I think let me continue by actually try to address two questions from the participants. I think first of all, whatever question that we are confronting now, it is a really good time for us to redefine, in our opinion, the value creation imperative. That means previously in the economy pre-COVID, a lot of value disparity actually happening in the economy. I don't need to mention specifically, but across sector, this is a time for us to really innovate around value innovation, as what Michael Chang mentioned in the Blue Ocean Strategy, his most celebrated book. On that score, I would like to highlight, I think, 4 items or 3 items that I think require consideration as far as reskilling employees are concerned. First of all, this is happening now because our people very much are restricted in terms of movement. Most people are actually using extensively online services, Zoom session, social media, YouTube channel, and others. So this give rise to social learning. I'm of course the proponent of social learning and Albert Bandura, where human naturally learn socially because we are social animal after all. But due to industrial models of economy that led to industrial model of education, the entire education system has been designed into individual workmanship or craft to learn something. Whereas as a human being, we are very much a social learner. I had a good real life example now. We are running workshop, more than 2,100 participants in Facebook for the writing skill. And they are coming from, I think, more than 20 countries. And these are all done through Facebook group. I would say this is the simplest form of social learning example that can be harnessed by employer, so that allowing their staff to really explore as many social learning platform or initiative in the social media, be it in LinkedIn, in Twitter, in Facebook, that are actually trying to address the limitations of movement as far as COVID is concerned. That's number one. Number two, when, as Dr. mentioned just now, there must be some adjustment to be made. Surely there must be some cost-cutting measure underway in many organizations. Therefore, there must be some kind of a reconciliation, whether we are an employer or whether we are an employee. Because why? The ability to reconcile so that the employer would be able to allow for their staff to, what we call it as a job crafting. Not is just about job seeking or kind of part-time job, but the ability for the staff to craft their job. I think this is quite a new concept, but it's a quite interesting concept already done in quite a number of big company like Google and others. They call it job crafting. What is job crafting? Job crafting means the responsibility of the job given are not entirely from company giving a specific job specification to the employee to undertake and to complete the specific job or task. But this is rather reciprocal responsibility between the company and the employee, and they will be able to, crafting in the way that the task is actually belong to the employee, though it is actually given the responsibility by the company. So job crafting is a way to reconcile this dichotomy. The third one, of course, is about remote workplace. As there is one report by I found it in the internet. They call it 2020 Best Remote Work Industry Virtual Vacation Report, mentioning about the list of industries that are very much easily adopted to remote working environment. Clearly, the clear winner is IT, information technology, sales, healthcare, accountant management, project management, customer service, consulting, education, marketing, since marketing has grown significantly digitally now, human resource, translation, management, teaching, writing, human resource, non-profit, quality assurance, event management, research, financial, and others. Of course, clearly, retail and travel and tourism would be the the least adaptable to this kind of remote work environment. The last one, I think this is the crux of the matter. I would like to address one of the question: how higher education or university will be able to adopt to a new curriculum that is very much attuned towards economy post COVID-19. I think there is one report by Forbes in mid-April when they say that the collapse of economy post COVID-19 require huge force in terms of independent work, or they call it gig, as well as a freelancing workforce. Because I think the logic is obvious. When the company tried to do the cost cutting, in order to rebuild the company, they cannot rely on the existing engagement of work in terms of a contractual obligation as employee and employee. Of course, there are numbers of companies that started adopting this model by actually terminating or doing some mutual agreement with the employee so that they would be able to work independently as a free agent, as a freelancer, based on deliverable-based job or value-based kind of work. That means every frictions of economic unit of the job would be quantified. Therefore, you will be able to actually work from home, and you can quantify the numbers of work, the numbers of hours or time consumed in order to complete a particular job. By having that a small fraction of economic unit of every job, that would be able to create kind of space for everyone to work independently. Of course, we don't expect the salary that they used to earn before, but actually create another hypothesis of having more freedom, having more flexibility of communication, time, and whatnot. So I think be more focused on how free independent work or gig or freelancing work would be able to really somewhat innovate the workforce for the next years to come as far as post-COVID-19 is concerned. Over to you, Doctor, or Nazri.
Thanks, Naeem, for the very structured and insightful pointers. For me personally, because things are not normal anymore, so you need very drastic solutions to address drastic measures. So to me, the way of doing things have to be changed drastically. So I'll give you a very specific example. How long does it take for a designer to design a set of posters or a set of collaterals or marketing decks? Let's say you run a business, you need a marketeer, you need a marketing person to do it. Traditionally, if you outsource to a vendor, it will take like 5 days, 2 weeks, depending on their load, right? But nowadays, with the different technologies that are available, okay, you can basically do it under 1 hour. Okay, produce as many collaterals as you can with ready-made smart technological-based templates that will help you to design and develop original craftings of sorts, right? So then how many people do you need and how long would it take for you to write a report or write an analysis or news? right? Again, with technology available, you don't need somebody, a writer, who will then spend 5 days or 10 days, right, to come up with 3-4 articles. Nowadays, you can do it by minutes, okay? Something that you can cull, originate, process, and basically turn it into something forward-looking. So we're talking about writing and researching. This can be automated. So I keep mentioning technology of an advanced nature because reskilling here relates to the ability to prepare yourself for the jobs that you're doing now for the future. So if you imagine that you think what you're doing now is applicable, it is no longer applicable. Let's say accounting, right? As what Naeem mentioned. How long does it take to interpret the financial statements of a company or a set of companies for various purposes, right? So instead of taking hours or even weeks, right, you can do it in minutes, right? And very quickly in a high number of companies that you are processing. So all these relate to the ability to manage data. And just manage data means you have to have some augmentation, means that you have to use some form of AI. And AI has to be made available to all. It cannot be expensive, it cannot be costly, it cannot be inhibitive, right? So the idea is if we were to do the same thing over and over again, thinking that it will prepare us for this concept of reskilling, it won't. Okay, because like I said, right now, things can be done very quickly, things can be done very efficiently, as long as we are exposed to those kind of technology, right? To come out with a deck, to come out with a poster, to come out with a post, right? To come out with analysis of what a 300-page document is, right? All these can be automated. So when these are happening, right, the future employers or employees in the future will be compelled to take on all this technology and rely less on human. They still need human, right? But what we're saying here is that the shift is going to be very dramatic. So yes, there will be not just high level, not just the blue collar thing, right? But also the white collar will be affected. So for sure, automation will remove a lot of redundant, monotonous work, right? So now the issue here is the white collars, right? The white collar workers. Okay, so if we don't know what is the latest technology that is helping employers and companies to become faster, more efficient, then we are like, sitting ducks, we are like ducks about to be shot, right? And we must be proactive about it. So some questions that were posed talk about mindset, right? So mindset is always, like I mentioned in the chat forum, is a perennial thing, even before COVID, right? Now, if you are sick, if you're unwell, right, what do? You go to a doctor scan you, doctor does the MRI, does the stethoscope, checking blood pressure and all that, and start giving you the diagnosis and then prognosis, and then followed by the prescription. So to us, changing mindset is a little bit more complex, right? It's behavioral, it's attitudinal, it's mentality, mindset, all thrown into one. So the real situation faced at the university level, for example, we have not really done enough what you call social emotional learning testing. We've not done enough job creation, aptitude tests. We've not really done enough gap analysis of the 5 or 10,000 students in a university that's about to enter the workforce. And this vicious cycle, we keep on going over and over again. And employers will have to absorb half-cooked or semi-cooked so-called workforce into their organization. And the employer have to invest a lot of training, investments into their development. Okay, and the gap is getting wider and wider because industry is moving faster and faster, and the curriculum is getting very, rigid and static, right? And the industry is moving 5-10 times ahead. So this is a common problem we all seen last 3 to 4 years. The question here is, as I use the analogy of visiting a clinic, right? If there is no health check, right? Health check in terms of their mindset, in terms of the attitude, behavioral, then we have nowhere to start. We have nowhere to begin. We don't know where to start intervention. How to start doing the intervention program. You bring 10 mentors into the program, or 10 coaches, or 10 advisors, right? And they all come from different background, different skill set, different age group, different demographics. And then you bring in 500 students or youth who needs to be mentored by 10 different people with 10 different backgrounds. So the level of intervention is so complex that it has to be personalized at the end of the day. Personalized coaching, personalized advisory, personalized mentorship, personalized curriculum. That's the way to go in this crazy environment. And that's what I meant by drastic measures in the drastic situation. and you cannot do it manually, to start manually thinking analytically, to start thinking manually active learning, to start thinking about how to solve complex problem manually, you can't. It's just too many numbers, too many unemployed, too many issues, too many things to intervene. So technology becomes very key. The use of data, structured and unstructured data, is very, very key. You take academic grades, you take non-academic grades, you take their behavior, start studying them, and start creating a personalized roadmap to do intervention for them. So to us, the topic of reskilling is very, very critical if you use a data-driven approach that takes into account these qualitative aspects carefully. And then when the personalized output from each student or each worker or each employee comes out, that is where everybody requires a specialized approach to basically deal with their development and reskilling efforts. Okay, over to you, Doctor. If you agree or disagree, we'll be happy to discuss.
Yeah, I think I can't agree more with both of you, but if I can be playing the devil advocate kind of role a bit toward the end of the session. Some of the our colleagues, our friends, they are always good. They are quick. They are smart. They can be upgraded. They can be upskilled. They can be reskilled. Most of them can go through this process quite easily and smoothly. With small touch and small orientation, they can be made relevant next day. So they are back to workforce, and they can keep the job. They can do more. Perhaps they can get more. Get more payment for that matter. But how about those who are out of place? I mean, how could we also help them to ensure that everyone would have the equal opportunity not to be left out? If they cannot cope, if they cannot change, if they cannot be upscaled, what could we do basically to help the majority of them, if not all of them, to be able to come back to the workforce? In the banking sector, many loans are rejected by commercial bank. They go to the development bank. So we have the screening to make them bankable, giving them advice. I would say the same thing for human. Some of them are great by nature. Instinctively they are great, but some of them are not that great. So, but we need to help them as community. If I can play the role of advocate, devil advocate, and perhaps asking the same question to both of you. If you have something to say, some magic that you can share with the audience, how could we also address the need of certain people who are afraid of IT, very shy of IT, are not having the thought and believe they are of the future? So how could we address this issue moving forward? Thank you.
Let me try to answer this quickly, right? From two perspectives, employer perspectives and employee perspectives. From the various webinars that we've conducted, sometimes the employee wants to change, but employers don't want to change, right? Their supervisors, their bosses have what you call an inhibitive or prohibitive mindset, right? Yeah. So on the other hand, employees want to change, but employees also don't want to change. So it's very important to differentiate between employer and employer in a situation that you just put up, right? So in cases where the employer is the one that is resisting the change, right? And then the employee must unfortunately have to take his or own steps to basically take his own measures to carry out the intervention, the reskilling efforts. This is where sometimes the government schemes are available, right, to offset, to give incentive, to take up some reskilling or upskilling, programs with subsidies, to basically to take on those things to upgrade themselves. And this is where there's a friction between employer and employer, right? Because the employee wants to upgrade, and then the employer doesn't seem to encourage it. So this is very common, right, amongst very, very traditional industries. But fortunately, the last 5 years, we've seen a mindset change. Okay, especially if the first gen business is passing over to the second gen, and second gen pass to third gen business. So we see that, but very slowly. So in such a case, the employee must, the onus of development or self-development and self-awareness and self-management lies on the employee itself. Hence, bring up the topic of resilience that we talked about just now. And resilience is tied to mindset, right? And mindset is driven by the self-management, self-awareness that we talked about. So if the employee does not have that manner of self-sacrificial mindset, right? Do not want to sacrifice the extra time, extra cost to upgrade themselves because there's no choice. The employee doesn't want to do it. Then he or she will also sink downwards and be left behind in this. Okay, I'm explaining the situation because at the end of the day, we cannot wait for people to change us. We have to change within ourselves. Really, whether you're employee, there's the same case, right? Then for an employer's case, where the employee does not want to change, right? So the employee can do many, many things, invest, spend time, mentor, coach. That is very common, right? But, being, in a certain organization that you don't want to upgrade yourself, you just want office hour job, you just want to do simple tasks, you just want to go in and go out, check in, check out, right? So this is where this is the most vulnerable sort of workforce that will be structurally replaced. Okay, the employee may not replace him or her, but the industry will replace, metaphorically speaking, because there's no value add coming from the person, and it really depends on the person to upgrade. So all said and done, at the end of the day, whether the employee is supportive or not, or very supportive, if the employee does not want to reskill and upskill, and it's a mindset change, right? Then there's no reskilling outcome that will come out of it. Over to you, Naeem. It's not sure if you agree with me on this one.
Okay, I think referring to the question, I think it's really relevant to really understand from very much inward looking. What I meant is we need to understand the personal or individual strength of particular employee or someone that looking for certain reskilling. In fact, Foresight has actually recently come out with one report under the purview of, we call it Linchpin Academy. Linchpin Academy is an initiative. Linchpin is the word used by Seth Godin in his book. Linchpin is, according to Seth Godin, is a third force, neither white collar nor blue collar. This is a third force as traditionally suggested by Adam Smith in his book Wealth of Nation. But Linchpin, they are kind of people who bring their geniuses, because one of the factor is the ability for them to work around their strength. That means the first step is to identify individual strength. Of course, we have a lot of personality evaluation or testing, Myers-Briggs type indicator, multiple intelligence, or strength finder by Gallup Institute of Research. But all this profiling is actually partially relevant, but this requires a lot of trial and error as well. So therefore, what we do is we are trying to divide the independent work, so to speak, into 4 quadrants. Of course, it depends how everyone, as that suggested just now, it depends how they perceive themselves, the level of expectancy and expectations of their own self in terms of creativity, in terms of confidence, and in terms of convincing other people. First quadrant is about what we call it a gig economy. Gig economy refer, if I can politely say, that is at the bottom of the pyramid as far as independent work is concerned. A lot of debates, politically debated as well, how the gig workers, especially in the context of Malaysia, Food Panda, Rider, Grab Food, are regarded as those indecent work. But that's the reality. Numbers of people, they, first of all, due to some lacking of skill in terms of communication, cognitive skills, and high level thinking, they are more comfortable to work around physical kind of accomplishment, being a rider, doing a physical work that not necessarily low paid job. But there are numbers of there are a group of people who would like to choose this kind of quadrant. That's number one. The second quadrant, we call it this is quite interesting. This is, I would say, the other end of the spectrum as far as gig is concerned. We call it the free agent. The free agent is those who are working extensively on the intellectual capacity that they have. They are in the form of consultant. They are in the form of a creative genius, working in the creative sector. They are also freelancers, because these people really make use of their intellectual and academic accumulation to be independent and to be able to, give value to numbers of clients. We can see these people are flocking around, a lot of crowdsourcing platform, like Incentive, Fiverr, another high-end platform for freelance. So these people, the second quadrant, is very much those who are use a lot of intellectual muscles, to be part of their work. Okay, the third quadrant is quite interesting. These are people who are somewhat comfortable in their existing job for whatever reason. Whether, for example, they love their job very well, but they are trying to do something as a side hustle. We call it, this quadrant is a side hustle quadrant. They are trying to do something unique. For example, he is working in the supervisory job for their full-time job, but he has certain levels of craftsmanship in arts. So they are these kind of people. They use all the platforms to sell online, for example, in eBay, in Etsy, and selling through social online platform in Facebook and Instagram, and they are actually earning decent money, but they never regard themselves as entrepreneur, free agent, nor gig worker. But they remain comfortable to be regarded as a side hustle people. That's the third quadrant. The fourth quadrant, we call it a solopreneur. Solopreneur and micropreneur. They are doing something that qualify themselves as entrepreneur, but in a very small kind of setup. According to some report by Chris Galibu, $100 startup, qualified this group as those who are working under the workforce of less than five workers. They are regarded as a micro startup, and some of them even are actually working as a solopreneur. So by having this four quadrant of people, I think at least it is fair to everyone, as Dr. Daud suggested. All those people will be able to actually adopt to respective quadrant based on their capability, based on their self-image. And only then we try to uplift them. We try to upgrade them by having a more engagement and conversation across these four quadrants. So we would ask them whether, do you want to explore any area in which that would really maximize their potential. But some of them, they are very much comfortable in respective quadrant that they belong to. So this is a very dynamic kind of independent works that we strongly believe will then represent more than, I would say, according to Kelly Services back in 2015, they will represent more than 65% of the entire workforce in the developed country. They are referring to North America as well as Western Europe. So by having COVID-19, I would say this is going to accelerate the process of independent works, where everyone should bring the value to the work. They would live happily, and they can actually reclaim their most creative self in the near future.
Thank you, Naeem. Very quickly, thanks for sharing the insightful four quadrant approach that you just shared. Yeah, the question to Dr. Daud is very interesting. Dr. Daud, can you see the questions posted in Facebook Live that we put it here? From Yaomi Yusof, how do you think? From Adam Afiq, right? If judicial field can replace by AI machine, what about hukum in fiqh and process of istinbat could replace also, and if possible, tajdid fiqh become faster and wider, right? So can you comment on that very quickly? I mean, this is something that is close to your heart. Thank you,
Yeah,
Doctor.
thank you. This is not really a profession to start off. Only few people can do this kind of exercise, like the scholars and the mufti of the state and what have you. But since Adam has posed this question, I have to answer with great pleasure that this can be done quite easily. If we can do for the legal reasoning, the reasoning, the legal thinking process, we can do the same thing for Sharia judicial reasoning, if you like, because the Quran and the Sunnah are very analytical, they are data driven, they are very much guided by certain trend, and this trend will lead to the cognitive understanding and interpretation. So, to cut the story short, this can be done quite easily, and we're going to see a new form of scholars and interpreters in the future. But in terms of job spec, this is not really can create job opportunities for the wider scope of people, so that as we speak today, I think our focus is more on try to create as many jobs as possible, because this is the need of the current society, but not to undermine the importance of using the technology in terms of tajdeedul fiqh to revive and to regenerate fiqh. We can use the trend, the data as supplied by the algorithm in the smart technology. Back to you, Nazri.
Sorry, Doctor, one more question from Yaumi Yusof. Again, this is in the realm of education, which you shared before about personalized learning. Do you think that the education sector is ready for personalized learning? Because you sit at the IUM level, you've seen across all the education sectors very intently. Do you think the university has a choice, or do you think we are taking our time, or do you think we are, on the way there? Putting up for personalized learning?
I think perhaps the responses could vary from one university to another. Some of the universities we have seen they have taken the necessary step to personalize training, because they know they cannot cope with thousands of students using human capacity. They need to depend on the data that they have from the SPM, the result, the curriculum of the student, the behavior of the student, and what have you, the family background, the income bracket and whatnot, to really understand the student better. Some of the university, they started to understand this. Some of the university are still not being alerted or triggered on this issue. So we need to continue talking and sharing the new way of doing things, because students would deserve a better treatment for them to be better developed and guided in 3 to 4 years of their study at the university. Thank you.
Naeem, final word from you, noting that the time has passed 5. Any last words in a brief?
I think this is COVID-19 actually leave the world open to everyone to grab. Anyone who are actually able to come up with, convincing, of course, work in progress kind of solution, I think everyone else would be more than happy to, try out and participate in the way that is going to be shape the future in a more structured and solid manner. So I think everyone is actually free to offer solution, to create value, to innovate, so long as we will be able to have early adopters that convince our ideas, and from there on we try to improve along the way. So I think that's the spirit for everyone, try to reskill, to upskill, and to improve themselves in any sector possible.
Thank you, Naeem. To round up this whole discussion, I'm pleased to I'm really grateful and thankful to Dr. Daud and Naeem, as well as Razi, as best as he could, to basically, share their insights on the reskilling aspects of today's environment. So in order to understand this whole session, we basically understood that there are the employer's perspective, and then there's the employee perspective, right? We also seen that there are dimensions that we can measure to know how effective the reskilling efforts are through diagnosing as well as prescribing certain intervention plans. And we basically feel that there are a lot of work to be done by using lots of data, by using a lot of expert sharing from various parties, right? To share their experience to deal with the current workforce that we're facing now. We also find that there are challenges that happened, especially in the areas of mindset. And mindset needs to be filtered, needs to be diagnosed, needs to be going through what you call a health check, assessment first before we can do any intervention or action plan. So a couple of quadrants were being shared, and a couple of devil's advocate thought processes were being challenged by Dr. Daud. Yeah, and we find that in all of this, it becomes very, very important for everybody to basically use all this information, use all the experience, put them into technology box, and then start doing the personalized coaching, personalized roadmap, and personalized intervention plan. I think this is the key takeaway. We can't do it manually. If there's 1 million unemployed personnel, we can't possibly have 1 million mentors to mentor 1 million people, right? So there has to be an element of self-check, self-assessment, self-awareness, and self-diagnosis done, and data is collected, and then we provide some help to the specific issues that they face in a systematic way. I think this is where we find that technology plays an important part as part of the reskilling effort by employers and for the employees. As far as the incoming unemployed graduates are concerned, even though it seems very dark and gloomy, I think I get some solace, some assurance on Naeem and Dr. Daud that at least they're beginning to adapt to being more resilient. They know they have to work more, pay less, right? And still got to do some form of job one way or another to survive, yeah? And this is a good sign, not a bad thing entirely, but it can be an opportunity, as what Naeem has asserted, that they can be reskilled into doing, something that they can do better, right? Do something better with new skills, and then carry out new skills through upskilling, carry out new jobs or new projects, yeah? And so with that, I would like to end the session. Thank you so much for your time. And we will continue to update you with episode 4 of this session, probably after Raya. Thank you so much, Dr. Daud. Thank you, Cik Naeem, and everybody else. And thanks, Razi.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.